Hi everyone, welcome to week 15 of reading through the Bible in 1 year. And just looking back over this last week, we finished off Deuteronomy, then we went into Joshua, and we're still continuing Luke and Psalms and Proverbs. One thing about Luke, I looked back over the week, what we read, almost everything is read, and it's all Jesus teaching. There's a couple of healings, but mostly it's his teachings. One thing I noticed over this last week specifically was, for me, stood out, was leadership. And we see the death of Moses and then Joshua taking over to lead the Israelites. And it says about Moses in chapter 34 of Deuteronomy, starting verse 10, it says, "Since then no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord had sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials in the whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel." Moses was such an amazing leader, and it says there was no one like him came up. And then again in Joshua, in chapter 3, it says about Joshua, and this is just after they crossed the Jordan River. It says in verse 14 of chapter 4, "That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of Israel, and they stood in awe of him all the days of his life, just as they had stood in awe of Moses." And these are great leaders, amazing leaders. And then again in Psalms we read a verse that stood out to me about King David. It says, "And David shepherded them with integrity of heart, and with skillful hands he led them." There's some amazing leaders in the Bible, and yet they're not perfect people, but they were submitted their lives to God. And what the world sees as people who are mighty leaders, not necessarily what God sees as a good leader. And we see that in Jesus, because Jesus seemed to do everything backwards to what the world would expect him. He would tell people that to be great, you need to be the least, you need to take up your cross and follow him. He said that he ate with sinners and tax collectors, those who that society at that time looked down upon, and he challenged those who thought they were really religious and right. He would challenge them. He always pushed humility and love, and those were the foremost of his life, and we don't see that a lot in our leaders, in our leaderships. And yet that's something that we need to strive for if we want to be good leaders, but also we should look for in good leaders as well. I think a lot of times in our lives we don't realize how much we lead other people, and we think that, oh well, it's just me, nobody else is following me. But there is people following you, whether it's your family, whether it's friends, whether those you influence at work. You don't have to have a role as a leadership to be a good leader. And so I think we need to learn from Moses, from Joshua, from King David, from Jesus, that to be a good leader, first of all, we need to love the people. We need to love those around us and give up our lives for them. Jesus said, "Take up your cross and follow me." And that is how we be a good leader. We set an example as being obedient to God. We are good leaders by obeying God as well and honoring him. This last week in my journaling, I wrote about Luke 13:30. It says, "Some who seem least important now will be the greatest then, and some who are the greatest now will be the least important then." And my thoughts, I put, what we see as important is not how God sees. We are looking through the lens of our worldly perspective. The Father, help me to see people how you do and not through the eyes of this world. So I just challenge you to remember that you are a leader. No matter what you are doing in your life, there's people who are following you. There's people who look up to you, and to honor God in that. But also choose those who you follow well. Don't follow people, whether it's following them online or in reality. Don't follow those who are going to lead you in the wrong way. And honor God with that. All right, God bless you. See you next week.